Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Writing Life. I'm Stephen W. Long, and so pleased to have kind of a special guest today. Bob Zahniser is best known as a poet, an award-winning poet, nevertheless, and but also to some other writing credits, which we're going to talk about today. And this, Bob, started out as a play,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
And sort of transitioned into a movie. Is that correct?
Well, the transition was Mike Santenay told me that what was called at the time the Second Saturday Film Group
Okay.
was looking at scripts and invited me to submit a script to it, and I did, and they went over it and decided to choose that script.
Okay. So now, did Mike know about the script, or he just mentioned it?
No, Mike knew that I wrote, and he
Okay.
had mentioned to me about the scripts and whatnot, and I said, well, I've got,
Okay.
I've got some scripts. So we tried them out, and they liked it. I had to learn something entirely new, which was how to write and format a screenplay.
Right.
So, and the whole process, there were some flaws in the writing, some things I hadn't fully thought through that we had to make allowances for. But in the main, it's just been a wonderful experience being involved with the film group. They did a great job.
Well, kind of what I wanted to talk about was like the structure of a screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
First, talk about it as a play, as a stage play. Why is that different? And when you conceive that, what do you have to then throw out or add or whatever to transition to a screen?
Well, to do what I wanted to do in the play, I had to jump through a lot of hoops to figure out how it was going to happen on stage.
On stage, okay.
And those things just did not work the same way in the screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
So it ends up getting just changed to deal with that format.
Okay.
Now, what I'm told also is that there's a difference between the way that when you're going through writing a play and performing a play is very different than the way that you go through doing a film. A film is much more collaborative.
Okay.
It's much more where you've got to figure out, it's innovative, where you're trying to figure out, okay, we've got this scene, how are we going to do this on film?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just very interesting to see the solutions that people come up with. And also, if I understand correctly, in plays, the author's voice is sacrosanct. You never change a word in the plays.
Okay.
Whereas in film, sometimes the actors they're doing things along the lines of what you've said. Sometimes it's actually better than what you wrote.
Right.
And hopefully those will have been captured and are in the film.
Okay.
So, but it's just been good. I mean, we had wonderful actors. I mean, the first time I saw Ken Moore came in to audition.
Yes.
And it's the first time I've ever actually watched an audition.
Yeah.
And he walked in, sat down, and he had nailed it. I was just sitting here
Really?
watching the character come to life in front of me. And I was astonished. And then Cameron, the director, that's Cameron Nye, I asked him, I said, well, later on, because what Cameron did next was he said, all right, now do it like this. And he had some different take on it that was, very different.
Really?
And I asked him afterwards, I said, he nailed it the first time.
Yeah.
Well, why would you ask him that? And Cameron said, well, when you're directing, you want to know that the actors can take directions, that they can do it differently and listen.
Okay.
So, but for me, I mean, I have never in my life experienced where I actually saw a character come to life in front of me. I mean, I will never forget it.
You know Ken, and as do I. And in fact, Ken has a show, and he's been on this show. I knew he was an accomplished guy. I didn't know he could do that.
Yeah, well, he absolutely nailed it. I mean, that character was my character.
Okay.
It was just what I'd written. And for him to have read the script and pulled it out like that, to me, was just astonishing.
Well, I wondered how much preparation they got. So he got your script ahead of time.
I think so, but I'm not positive.
Well, I guess, to some extent, if you're auditioning for a part, you'd have to know what that part is, not just, hey, I want to be in your movie.
Actually, I'm not sure the details on that, about how much info they had up front and whatnot.
Okay.
But I know he did a great job. And all the actors were really good. The actress who plays the main character in it, one of the main characters, just did a wonderful job. I mean, I was just astonished.
Now these folks are they local, or
Yes, just about it. Well, local if you include Portland local.
okay? And
So-
are they actors outside of this, or is this a? Did we get lucky? Did you get lucky, or the?
Yes, we got very lucky.
Okay.
She's an actor that Cameron Nye's, I think, agent knew.
Okay.
I think that was the connection that brought her into the film.
Okay.
Yes, and the casting too was a real. We couldn't find. I wrote the thing, and in the play you didn't actually need a child. I had arranged it on screen so you'd hear the child but not see the child.
Okay.
And whatnot. Well, in the movie we couldn't do that. So essentially we were looking for a 3-4-year-old that could say some dialogue like a 3-4-year-old.
Right.
Shockingly, we couldn't find anyone who would do that. And also, as the child gets killed, I think we had just right off the bat a number of people that just, I don't want my kid to get killed on screen.
Right.
But of course, the child never had any idea what was going on.
Right.
And I was actually lucky enough to find someone I knew that had a child who was willing to
Oh, okay.
let the child do it. But then when the child came on, at first she didn't want to do it at all, and she came in on one day and she wouldn't talk, but she'd sit there. So there was a whole bunch of dialogue associated with the kid. Well, that changed.
Okay.
It had to change because.
So you had to rewrite this.
Well, I didn't rewrite. Cameron actually took it. I mean, it was just on the fly
Oh,
and
really?
told the actress, "Okay, this is the situation. So we've got this dialogue.
Okay.
Say this instead." So that's what I mean by it. It's more fluid than.
Then a play.
Yeah, much more fluid than a play. And you write a short story, you write it, it's gone. Maybe they accept it, they don't.
Sure.
But on this, I mean, a lot of what's good in the film has got nothing to do with me, because it's the way they decided to interpret it and present it visually, and of course
That's really
the acting.
interesting. Yeah.
So I mean, it's really nice to have a film out there that I've written the script for.
Yeah.
And but it's also the result, the end result of that is the talents of all those people.
Sure. I heard two related stories, I think. One being when Robin Williams was doing something, and I think it was Dead Poets Society. He ad-libbed a line, and the director shut down the set.
Oh,
and
really?
Yeah, and said, "That's it for today." And then I think called him aside and said, "Think about this. In other words, this isn't an improv." And so that was that director's take on that film.
Huh.
Woody Allen, when people ask him, "Well, how do you want me to do it?" when he's directing, I guess Woody Allen's standard response is, "Oh, you know what to do."
And
let's
just let them run with
so
it.
very different approaches to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, it was just very much a learning experience for me.
Now, were you on set when did you get to watch it being made?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. I mean, this year with all the medical stuff and the surgeries and whatnot, it's just been, it was a rough year.
Yeah.
But this film, yes, I was able to watch the filming and be involved in that and all the discussions that we're having about it, and it's just been a great experience.
You're talking about the difference between a play and a film.
Yeah.
One of the things clearly is a play is live.
Mm-hmm.
And so it unfolds in that strict sequence. I guess it's legendary that a movie can be shot out of sequence.
Oh yes, yeah, and the movie
so-
was shot out of
And,
sequence.
so, anybody know an editor that put some time in? And I think
Yeah,
that's
Kyle's
so
working
interesting.
on that right now,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So
Well, great.
it really has been something though, and I just the film they did last year was pretty good. I think this one's going to be good.
Yeah.
And they're getting set up to do one for next year.
Okay.
So
Well, Bob, talk a little bit about this has gone from a play to a movie,
Right.
And then the movie has now has it been entered in our local contest?
it's going to be.
Going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be entered in the McMinnville Film Festival.
Okay.
So and the Short Film Festival. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I hope
Boy,
it'll
I
be-
am too.
And I understand they've got a lot of international entries this year. That festival's been getting
Really?
better known, and yeah,
Wow.
so they said they're going to be getting a bunch of entries this year.
Robert
from
Redford, I
abroad.
think, is coming, isn't he?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Redford,
that's what I
and
thought.
also some big stars.
Yeah, we're working away. Caroline, can we show a little clip of that? Can you do that?
Authorizing access.
This is the treatment room.
When does it go too far?
Yeah.
I know, and what's justified. I've seen some things, like the one about that girl in, Sweden, Switzerland? They were just all revenge. Of course, I can't remember the name of those films. There were 3 films.
Okay.
No, that's gone. But anyway, this is basically a very short, look at what constitutes revenge and what constitutes justice and what constitutes treatment.
You know, I heard something that really stuck with me, and that is, we want justice for others and mercy for ourselves.
That's a good.
And that's maybe the kind of the difference when, as you said, what is justice? In fact, if I'll go off on a little bit of a tangent here, in our church in the last couple of weeks, we've had one of the Linfield professors come and talk to us about the state of the world at the time of Christ. And one of the things he said was that revenge was sort of the standard. That people were obligated, if somebody hurt your father, then you were obligated to
go back and,
to take revenge. And the change has been forgiveness, which I think is not too politically incorrect to talk about here, but so those decisions aren't black and white, I guess, and maybe that's what you're saying too. That what constitutes, you can't let everybody go, but at what point then do you stop, I guess, showing mercy and start saying, no, you know, there needs to be some reconciliation here?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a line that goes something like an eye for an eye eventually leads to everyone being blind.
Sure.
Yeah. It's just it never ends.
Yeah.
So, but it's just almost a rumination on it. It's funny too because when you write something, like I wrote a scene where a woman and a child get killed in the film. Well, when I wrote it, I mean, I meant to write it horrific. I wanted it to be horrific.
Right.
But when you see what you've written that's horrific on screen, it's much more visceral.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, you really see it, it's like, wow, that
Right.
is violent. So
Yeah.
I joked with Cameron that, I think this film is too violent for me because it included that scene that I wrote. So
Yeah.
But that's something that's interesting.
Well, I kind of veer back to literature here. It seems to me that in crime fiction, so in a novel, there are cozies, there's police procedurals, and so on. And so within that greater umbrella of mystery or crime, there are these divisions. There is some slice of that seems to me that the people feel compelled to be more and more horrific. And I wonder if, as an author, they're trying to stand out, this is what I do, and we've already had mass murder, so now I have to go beyond that, or something.
Yeah.
And which I suppose is a commercial decision, but boy, at some point that's, at least for me as a reader, that's too much.
Yeah, for me too. I don't like those books or novels or series where they go into, well, there are some series that only follow serial killers.
Right.
And a lot of people are just fascinated by serial killers.
Yeah.
So it's okay. It's part of human nature, and that's what we do.
I remember there was the movie, I think it was called Paris Trout. Do you
I've heard of it.
Yeah, and that was too much for me. And that's an older one, and it's in that one there's sexual violence, and it's just I've
Well, you remember one time there was this thing about snuff films, where people actually get killed on film. There were people that were watching those and buying them underground and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's ridiculous. I think that was back around the 80s or so.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a what can get expressed. I mean, is anything people can express.
Yeah.
So, but for me on this process of getting back to the collaborative nature of it, when we write, we're essentially sitting down by ourselves and writing something.
Sure.
And if we're in a writing group, as you and I are, we're lucky enough to be able to get some suggestions from others from how to improve our work and whatnot. But with the exception of that, it's essentially working alone.
Sure.
And working on a film is nothing like that at all.
Uh-huh.
I mean, when you work on the film, well, part of it is you've lost some degree of control.
Right.
Like, well, I wrote this, and that's the way it's. No, that's not the way it's.
Uh-huh.
Because you want the film to move forward, and also, like I say, oftentimes the changes. Matter of fact, the changes, I would say all of them, with the exception of some that we had no choice about, were improvements to it.
Okay.
So.
And you credit Cameron with that, I guess.
Well,
Or is it
everyone
the
who was
actor, or is it
involved,
both? Or okay.
Cameron came up with suggestions. Mike came up with some suggestions. Phil Guzzo came up with a bunch of suggestions.
Right.
There were just suggestions from everyone. I mean, it really was truly a collaborative effort. I mean, it started with a group of people having a desire to do a film.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I had written something, which was a play that I had sent off to a couple of short play festivals, and I'd never even got a response back on.
Oh, Bob, I was thinking that it did. So okay, well, I missed that.
No, it actually hadn't gotten any responses on. So to be able to have something done with it to come out in a film, it's just thrilling.
Yeah,
It really is. So, and I think it's going to be a good film. I mean, the quality of the acting, I would never have expected actors of that caliber.
Local,
to
amateur,
be, yes,
right.
I just would not have expected it.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the directing too, and the innovation and the editing.
Yeah.
It's just been really good, and it's just been a pleasure to see.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned, I think, Cameron's agent. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah.
So this is not his first time out.
Oh no, he's directed films and acted in films before.
Okay.
So, and actually, Cameron has a dual role in here because we had trouble finding one of the parts, so he's actually playing one of the parts.
Okay.
So, no, he was, and that's another thing. The way that we pay all this attention to movie stars.
Yeah.
If you watch how movies are made, you would be going to movies strictly based on the directors.
Sure, I can see that now.
Yeah, because the director really, encompasses it's his vision that's getting onto that screen.
Yeah.
So it's and the actors are phenomenal with the bringing it all together, the pacing, the way it looks. I mean, that's something that the director is responsible for.
Yeah.
And Cameron is great because he takes all that input, and whatever's best is what rose to the top.
Yeah. Not that I thought of it or he thought of it. It's,
Yeah.
It's what's best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bob, this is topical now. People watching this, 10 years from now will be able to pinpoint the time, because Penny Marshall just died.
Oh yes, that's true.
And as fun as she was to watch on screen, things like a Big or A League of Their Own, boy, they were terrific movies.
Yeah, and I think being an actor, well, you see so many actors becoming directors.
Right.
And
It's a step up.
Yes.
Where I think if you're only focused on the celebrity, it seems like, well, you don't see him. Why would you want to direct? But that's really where it's at.
yeah, it is. And if I had not seen this process, I mean, when I was younger, I was a film buff and went to a lot of foreign films and whatnot, and really
Sure.
enjoyed them. But I never had a clue as to how films were actually made.
Right.
And seeing how films were actually made, I mean, we really ought to be, this director's coming out with a new film next week, which we
Right.
do for what
Spielberg or
Spielberg, or the guy who, James Cameron, was the one who
sure.
did Titanic
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Yeah.
Those, when they come out with a new film, it's like that. But for most films, it's the new whatever actor.
You know who I liked was David Lean. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Bridge on the River Kwai,
Oh, it's a good film,
Ryan's Daughter. Just sweeping, majestic filming. And I think that was sort of, when you go from one of his films to the next one, I think that you can see a philosophy or a vision of the world, and they were just magnificent, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really is. That is what a film is essentially the director's vision.
Yeah.
So, and it's just nice to see. And like I say, I'm glad that Cameron was such a good director.
Yeah.
We really just lucked out talent-wise on all those things.
Well, I can't wait to see it.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it myself.
Sofia Coppola, obviously
Yeah,
her dad.
Francis Ford.
But one of her films is Lost in Translation. And I think that's one of those you love or you don't like at all. And I loved it. I thought it was
That was with Bill Murray, wasn't it?
for Bill Murray,
Yeah.
and I think he was. I saw a little bit of an interview later, and I think that was very collaborative. That he had a lot of input.
Ah, that's good to know.
Yeah,
Well, I've read about famous scenes where people were just ad-libbing and whatnot,
yeah.
and it looks to be fairly common.
I think I've used this example before, but it's so interesting to me, and really relative to movie versus play, and that you said that the author in a play, their words are sacrosanct.
Yes.
Even then, and this has to do with Richard Burton, he was in a play, and he told a fellow actor, tonight I will make the audience laugh when I say this.
Ah.
And he said it, and they laughed. And the next night he said, and tonight I will make them cry when I say those same words.
And he had that
So they were
power.
the same words.
But the way that he did it
Yeah,
was,
and so that's acting. Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly
To
is.
take that sort of thing.
And you see the actors, like the woman, I've got her name here. I'm horrid with names. I really shouldn't have to do this. But the actress was just wonderful.
And you said she is an actress.
Oh, yeah, she's an actress.
She came from
She's a
Portland.
real actress, yeah.
Yeah,
And Evan Goldman is her name. And
Oh, I saw the name. I thought that was a guy.
no. And she just did a great job of it. And there was one scene where they're coming around the end of the car. She's being dragged by this murderous fellow. And she came around the car, and she had on this, Cameron had picked up a fake stomach so that it would look like she was pregnant.
Okay.
And she's coming around the car, and she's holding onto her stomach like she's protecting the baby from
Right.
this fellow. It was just a wonderful thing, which I don't think will even be in the film because there wasn't a camera set up to do that.
Oh,
She
nuts.
was only doing it because she was in character so much.
Right.
That she was doing this like instinctively as this is what a person would do. And it was funny because that day I was there during the filming, and I kept wanting to like offer her a seat or something because she had her stomach.
She convinced you.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how we pick up on these visual cues.
Yeah.
But I mean, just to have seen that and to know this wonderful gesture, it isn't even in there.
Yeah.
You know, but she was doing such a job that even when the camera wasn't there, it was just setting up for the scene, it was from the side, wouldn't see that. But still, that was part. She was in character. She looked like
Right.
it. Oh, that was another thing. They had to squirt blood on one of these. See, blood squirts on her face after she's stabbed
Oh,
to death.
sure.
And so I volunteered to do that. So here is the scene.
You were running the squirter.
Yes, I was
Okay.
running the squirter, which was just a little thing that Cameron had filled up with some, blood dye. And so in this, here's the front seat of a two-seater car. Okay, I'm in the back seat with my hand up here holding this little
Okay.
plastic thing to squeeze. The cameraman is over here, through the door. The director, because he's playing one of the parts, he has to have his hand in the scene while the camera's looking right at her with this knife. So he is on his back in the front seat with his foot up here towards the back. Cameraman's right here, and he's down there like that. And then the scene proceeds, and I'm in the back. The actress is in the driver's seat, facing this way. So she lunges for it. I squeeze on this thing. The red stuff just sprays all over inside the car, on her face. And someone mentioned even on her tooth.
Oh no.
Yes. Yeah, God was telling us about that. And It was just funny though. I mean, just the physical dynamics, and of course, what you'll see on screen
Right.
is someone stabbing, someone getting killed, but you have no idea that there's these 4 bodies around here
Right.
just to get this one little scene. It was funny.
And that's another difference between play and movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I
that's
think, again, we talked about Kyle editing, and or anybody who's in the editing process, and you can sort of, I suppose that it has to be there to work on, but the finished product maybe cuts out all that other stuff and just gives you that frame that you want. This is all you're seeing. If you could look outside that, there's all these folks around.
Oh, that were going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
I think it spoils it for me a little bit sometimes when I've watched a lot of movies and a lot of television, and when somebody, you can sort of tell that they're acting, or there's some indication that beyond that screen, something else is going on.
Yeah.
And that's disappointing.
Well, but it's the same thing when you're reading a book or a poem or something. You
Sure.
come across something that just doesn't fit. It just kicks you out of the experience.
Right.
And I think at the bottom of all of it, I mean, plays, poems, short stories, at the bottom is story. And I
Right.
think as I've gotten older, I really think that more and more our lives are governed by the narratives that we tell ourselves. That
Sure.
it's all story, basically.
Sure.
And, there's the story.
But there's
that
certainly
you're-
a skill level in how you do that.
Oh, yeah. Certainly the way you express it. But I just think that people really, I mean, there's the story of, where you live and what you do. And I think that story is something just intrinsic to people, intrinsic to our understanding of reality, because we can't actually touch reality. We're filtered by our senses, which don't actually convey what's going on, and,
Right.
by the frequencies that we can see. So, I mean, we were already a layer disconnected from reality. And in that layer is the story. And I think that story is essential, whether you're expressing it in any of these genres, whether it's painting or sculpture, there is story there. There is
Right.
narrative.
Well, and I think, and you may have meant this, but in your everyday life, I think there are ways that we talk to our neighbors or talk to our coworkers,
Yes,
things
yeah.
like that. And I have a friend who's a fine artist, and a painting is not a photograph. And so I know he talked about making those decisions, what to put in, what to leave out.
Yeah.
And I think when we tell a story, you can't tell every nuance from every direction.
No,
and
of
so
course,
you edit your story, and you decide either this is important or this makes me look better, or whatever it is. But like you said, we're telling a story.
Yeah, we're telling that story. That
Yeah.
story of ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah. Which we also tell to ourselves.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that that we could take it otherwise.
So, and that's something that's just interesting to me about. There's this just unification of everything, and I think film really is easier to get into.
Right.
Because when you're reading, you're active. You've got to hold something. You've got to
Right.
bring it in. So whereas with film, you
just
don't have to turn
absorb it.
pages. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a much less active activity. I think it's easier for people to do.
Yeah.
But then I ask myself too, because with film, and this is something that as a result of this process, but people spend so much of their lives watching film, watching these stories of other
Sure,
people.
sure.
And you've got to wonder, why do we do that? Why are these stories of others so interesting that instead of going out and creating on our own, we sit there watching television,
Right.
or watching whatever videos are on. And it's an interesting.
There's probably more than one answer, but I wonder if one of the answers isn't to compare. I'm better off than he is. I'm worse off than he is. I'm more accomplished. I'm less accomplished. So that's one. I think the other thing is, with my first book, I did a newspaper interview, and one of the questions was, will a reader be able to relate to something that's outside of their experience? And I said, well, I think people read for at least two reasons. One is to validate your experience, to read something and say, I felt like that. I would have had that same reaction had somebody done me a disservice. That's one thing. But the complete opposite is true too. I've never been to Mars and worked on a Martian base mining for ore.
No.
But I can read about it, and so you can experience it to some extent through stories.
I once read a diary that came from literally 1,000 years ago in Japan.
Right.
And I could relate to it because it was a woman who was writing it, actually, because of the human emotions that were in there. You know. One of the things that I'd actually written a poem about, because she was watching a carriage with her husband and his mistress going by.
Oh my gosh.
And just, you know,
So it could have been a Corvette, or it could have been a carriage.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's just that commonality.
Yeah.
And when you get into a story, it's because you see that. You see that relationship between the way they feel and the way you feel.
Right.
You know? So, and I think in some ways it educates us too, like, oh, that's how I should respond to this situation.
Right.
So.
Well, Bob, we're out of time. Thank you so much. I hope that you're going to keep this up.
It's been so much fun that I don't see how I can not do
Could
some
not
more.
do it.
Yeah.
And I'll see you at class soon, I hope. Yeah. So, well, folks, that's it for another The Writing Life. I'm Stephen W. Long. Gosh, send me an email at stephenwlong.com. Your suggestions for guests or topics are welcome, and we'll just see you next time. Thank you so much.
What do you think? We done?
I don't know. You guys want to do one just with yourself without me doing the
we're
bongos?
done, if they got enough, they got enough.
Probably got enough? Probably. Okay, sounds good.
Let's go lunch. I'm
Oh.
hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could use a bite too.